Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a first look at the all-new AYANEO Pocket Micro. And before we get started, I do want to mention that this is a prototype they were kind enough to send over. It's an earlier unit. It's not the final form, but going over this thing, there's not much that needs to be changed. It's really fleshed out like it is. First impressions here, after getting it out of the box, I think it's a really good looking unit, and AYANEO is always kind of delivered when it comes to their overall design. Got a premium CNC aluminum alloy frame, and with micro in the name, it's going to play a lot into this handheld. I mean, we've got a smaller form factor unit here with a 3.5-inch IPS display, and I will tell you, this display looks really good on this thing. It's got an aspect ratio of 3:2, so it's really perfect for those GBA games, but it's packing a lot more power than we need for Game Boy Advance emulation, making it perfect for other systems also. Taking a look, you can see it is really small. It does support a micro SD card, and you can get this in 2 different storage and RAM variants. We'll go over the specs in just a bit. It's got a little bit of heft to it, given that it is constructed of metal, coming in at 233 grams, and you can see we've got a bezel-less design on this IPS display. AYANEO isn't new to the Android handheld market. They've released a couple in the past, but one of my favorites is the Pocket S, and I just kind of wanted to give you a size comparison here. You can see it absolutely dwarfs the Micro. Let's go ahead and get the specs out of the way. Now, they opted to use the MediaTek Helio G99. It's not the most powerful chip on the market, but for the stuff that we're meant to be playing on this 3.5-inch 3:2 aspect ratio display, it's going to give us more than enough performance. 2 Cortex A76 cores up to 2.2 GHz and 6 A55 cores up to 2 GHz. The GPU is a Mali G57 MC2, and we've got active cooling here, so we can definitely keep the clocks up on the GPU and CPU with this unit. You can pick this up with either 6 or 8 gigabytes of LPDDR4X RAM, 128 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes of internal storage, and it is utilizing UFS 2.2. Micro SD card slot, 3.5-inch borderless IPS display with a resolution of 960 by 640, 330 pixels per inch, up to 400 nits of brightness, and of course we've got that 3:2 aspect ratio. Wi-Fi 5, Bluetooth 5.2, a 2600 mAh battery, and this is running Android 13 with the Aya Home launcher. Again, they are offering this in 3 different color variants. You've got the retro up top. I'm taking a look at the black one, and they've got the red in the lower right-hand corner. Personally, I think all 3 of them look pretty good, but that retro really does something a bit different up top. So yeah, this thing will fit right in the palm of your hand. You can slide it in your pocket. Up top, we do have our power button / fingerprint sensor, so we can easily log in. At the bottom, single USB Type-C input plus dual stereo speakers. And one thing I actually love about this is the D-pad. It's not too high, not too low. Really feels like they dialed this in, and we will be testing it by the end of the video. But we've also got Hall-based analog sticks here. Of course, they are the smaller switch size analog sticks because we're working with a really small handheld here, but from what I've been testing so far, really nice setup. Buttons feel great. Up top here, we've got the elevated and partition triggers and shoulder buttons. Down here on the left-hand side, we've got our start and select button, and it's a bit hard to see on this black version, but they're very easy to access. And over on the right-hand side, we've got an Android home button and the AYANEO button. We'll talk a little bit more about the software that's built in here because it can really help out with performance on this handheld. But first and foremost, this is an Android handheld. It is running Android 13. We've got that iOS launcher, full access to Google Play, so we can head over here and download any games we want to. Plus, we've got Aya Home. This is pretty cool. You can actually load your games up on internal or external storage, have this scan those directories, and it'll divide everything up. Basically, it's a built-in emulation front end. And just like Aya's other handhelds, there is some software here that'll allow us to kind of tweak the performance of this unit. So I definitely wanted to give you a closer look at all the settings we have here, but unfortunately it doesn't support HDMI over USB Type-C, at least at the time of making this video. I'm not sure if it will in the future. So I'm using a third-party application to kind of record the screen here, but heading down to our Aya settings, when entering this menu, you're going to be greeted with a bunch of different menu items. From our account, we can sign up for an AYANEO account. We can also set up our game library data sync from the website. Performance is something we're going to come back to because this is really important. You can also change our system language from here and input method. Device, root script, so we can root this device right now, and I don't know if this is going to be in the final unit or not. Remember, this is a prototype. server, where we're going to pull our updates from. And of course, down the way here, we've got our update, all settings, and about. When going to all settings, it's just going to bring us into the stock Android settings. But the main thing here is our performance. So as you can see, we've got a few different profiles we can use. Saving, fan is going to be completely off. Our CPU governor is going to be set at saving, so kind of a quiet mode there, lower power. Balanced, it's going to bring the fan mode up to low, balanced on that governor. From game, fan mode is going to go to high, and that fan is pretty quiet right now, but in max mode, this fan can get quite loud given the size of the unit. So turning this on will max that fan out, but through all of this, we can actually just kind of mix and match what we want here. Moving down to our CPU limit, this is pretty cool, and I really haven't seen this on other Android devices yet. We can set a max frequency on that CPU. So if you want to save some battery, if you know you're only going to be playing, lower end games, you could keep it in low power mode, or you could totally adjust it from here. So we can go with those smaller cores and those bigger cores. Up to 2 gigahertz on the smaller cores, 2.2 on those larger cores. But again, you can set up the maximum from here, kind of limit the power on this unit. Now, along with this, we can access many of these options directly from anywhere. While we're playing a game, from the main menu, it really doesn't matter. All we need to do is press the AYANEO button on the unit, and it's going to bring up our overlay. From here, it's going to give us our current FPS, CPU temperature, usage, same thing with that GPU and fan speed. Moving down, we can set up our profiles from here, adjust the fan, and we've got a performance overlay. This is one of my favorite things here. That way we know exactly what's going on with our unit while we're playing a game. And one of the main things is just that FPS counter, so it's a real-time FPS counter. From controller, we've got our controller link, vibration settings. Now this can go from all the way off up to violent, and this thing does have some pretty decent haptics built in, along with sound tap magic. This is something that AYANEO has used for quite some time in a lot of their handhelds. Basically, what Sound Tap Magic does is add vibration to games that never had vibration using sound. So it analyzes the sound, works really well with a lot of retro games out there. We can also adjust the sensitivity of the joystick from here, set up custom buttons, enable and disable the built-in gyro. And we've also got our handheld. So this is just kind of our main settings, brightness, sound. We can go to airplane mode, disable Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Widget, easy access to a lot of the Android settings. Screenshot, we can go to do not disturb mode, night light mode, so we can actually warm that screen up while you're playing at night. It's not going to hurt your eyes with that blue light. And we can get right back down to our settings. Something else I'll be showing off in my full review is the on-screen key mapper, and it works with games that don't natively support controllers on Android. Getting into a little bit of gameplay here, we're going to start off with some native Android games. After all, we've got access to Google Play. With something like Minecraft, we could leave this in low power mode and it'd be just fine, but I did want to show you these animations. I thought it was pretty cool. Switching between balanced game mode and max mode will give us a nice little animation on screen. And games that natively support controllers are going to work with the built-in controller just fine. So that goes for a lot of stuff over on Google Play, especially emulators. Obviously, Minecraft is working here just fine. I didn't have to change any of the settings. With this Hello G99, there's a lot of different Android games we're going to be able to run at full speed. Now, something like Genshin Impact, you'll probably have to drop it down to low, and I will throw that in my next video. And if there's any other native Android games you want to see running on this, just let me know in the comments below. One that I did test that I personally play is Diablo Immortal. Wanted to see how well it ran. Medium, 30 FPS, it works great on this, and all of the Android games that I've tested so far actually scale pretty nicely with this 3:2 aspect ratio display. I figured it'd kind of be all over the place, but of course, they went with this display for emulation. That's the next thing I want to take a look at, especially Game Boy Advance. And seriously, I've been having so much fun with GBA on this. With the aspect ratio and the resolution of this display, we can go up to 4x with GBA, and it looks absolutely amazing. I personally really like this screen here. It is a little oversaturated, 155% sRGB color gamut volume, but it's 100% sRGB. Personally, love a little oversaturation, and one thing I've been on the hunt for a very long time is actually a Game Boy Micro at a decent price. When I first met my wife, she was my girlfriend then, she actually bought me one for my birthday. So it was just a silver Game Boy Micro, absolutely loved that thing, but a few months later I had to sell it to pay rent. I sold it to GameStop or EB Games, whatever they were called at the time, and never was able to get another one, and prices are way up on them. So I've been holding off, I've been keeping an eye on eBay, I just can't find a decently priced one in good condition. But going over to what I consider like a candy bar device like this really does bring back a lot of those memories with the Micro. Obviously, it is coming in a bit larger, but this screen looks so much better. I mean, I'm really surprised by how good this little 3.5-inch looks. Next thing I wanted to test out here was the D-pad, and I've always been a big fan of most of the AYANEO D-pads that have come out with their handhelds. They definitely missed a few, but this one here on the Micro is really awesome. I love the roll on it, and a lot of this does come down to personal preference, but I don't think it's too tight, I don't think it's too loose, and it almost lines up with the body, so you can just slide right through those special moves. Now, of course, there are people out there that are going to want to play higher end emulators, so I wanted to show off some PSP. I've also got some Gamecube in this video just to show you what this Hello G99 can do. And right now I'm using the Vulkan backend with PPSSPP. There's really no need to do any kind of upscaling, so I'm set to 1.1 auto, and it looks great here, and it'll also handle the harder to emulate games. So I've got Ghost of Sparta running right now, 1x Vulkan backend, no frame skip. Looks really good on this screen, and it's playing through just fine. By the way, I've just connected an Xbox controller so I can keep this thing stationary. It's got Bluetooth 5.2 built in. Now, one thing I wish we had here was HDMI over USB Type-C. As far as I can tell, the USB Type-C port on this is actually running at a USB 2.0 speed, so I'm not sure if AYA could come up with a way to get video out of it or not. But in the past with other devices using a very similar USB Type-C port, we were never able to get video out of it. Next up, I wanted to check out some GameCube and Wii emulation. Vulkan backend, 1x resolution, no need to upscale anything. Auto Modellista, which I consider a harder to emulate game, especially on these lower end chipsets. It's doing way better than I thought, and right now I am in max mode, but it's not a continuous 60. Now I can tell you that with a modified version of the Dolphin emulator, I'm sure we're going to see some really great performance out of this, but I'm using the official just to see what it would do out of the box. I also wanted to test at least one Wii game. We've got Sonic Colors, and this is one of those games that ran natively at 30 FPS, and it's running at 30. So this is one that actually performs pretty decently. Again, using a modified version of the Dolphin emulator where we're able to kind of lower that resolution under native. It's still going to look good on this smaller display, and it will net us better performance on the G99. I'll get that set up for my full review, so definitely keep an eye out. And the final thing I wanted to test here was PS2 emulation. I'm using Nether SX2, Gran Turismo 4, 1x, Vulkan backend, and surprisingly enough, it's running at full speed. This is pretty awesome, and I definitely need to throw more PS2 games at it. We'll have to test some harder stuff, but this is kind of one of my go-tos for these low-end chips, and it's running just fine. So far, I've been having a blast with the new AYANEO Pocket Micro, and when they first announced this, I got excited. Then they showed us the specs with that G99, that Helio. We know what kind of performance this thing puts out. Not the most powerful, but given their performance tweaks and the lower resolution of this display, it is handling those higher-end emulators better than I ever thought it would. There's definitely a lot more that I need to test on this. Want to get some battery life testing out of the way. We'll run some more native Android games in my official review, and if there's anything else you want to see running on the AYANEO Pocket Micro, just let me know in the comments below. I completely understand that these smaller handhelds aren't for everybody, but I do know there is a market for it, and the screen they added to this looks great. I love the D-pad. Form factor is perfect for just sliding right in your pocket. This could be appealing to a lot of people out there. And if you want to learn a little more, I'll leave a link to their official website and Indiegogo in the description. But again, full review will be coming in a few days. Let me know what you want to see running. Like always, thanks for watching.